Вітаю вас. Наш брифінг присвячений викриттю фейків та пропаганди держави-агресора.
Greetings. Our briefing is dedicated to exposing fakes and propaganda of the aggressor state. In recent days, Russia, with the help of its puppet government, has administered false justice to 3 foreign nationals in the occupied territories under the Donetsk People's Republic brand, sentencing them to death. These are 2 citizens of Great Britain and 1 citizen of Morocco. This is a typical example of how the aggressor state uses the brand of the court to raise the stakes in the war and thus legalize their proxy representatives of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic. Thus, it is said that the Supreme Court of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic sentenced these 3 foreign nationals to death. We understand that we are talking about the use of these citizens as a kind of tool for the legalization of the so-called justice in the territory of the Donetsk People's Republic, based on the fact that the international community or representatives of these 3 foreign nationals would enter into legal relations with the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, for them to appeal, negotiate, or otherwise avoid the execution of this unjust and completely devoid of any legal basis sentence. The Ukrainian state considers these citizens as its combatants and will take all measures to release them and prevent their executions on the territory of the Donetsk People's Republic. As for the tactics of the aggressor state in general, it is trying at all costs to legalize these proxy formations in the occupied territories, and of course it does not take into account any of the Geneva Conventions, violations of which were recorded during the issuance of these pseudo-sentences. This has already been stated by the international human rights organization Amnesty International, calling these death sentences a direct violation of the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war. In turn, the Ukrainian state also counts on the active position of the International Committee of the Red Cross to prevent the execution of these sentences, regarding the visit of prisoners to whom such measures have been applied, in order to prevent violation of their fundamental rights in these occupied territories. In turn, we call on all international organizations, including the Committee of the Red Cross, to pay due attention to this case and prevent violations of the Geneva Convention, which unfortunately Russia has repeatedly done since the beginning of this bloody war against Ukraine. 2 other fakes and propaganda tricks of the aggressor state. In particular, they continue to broadcast a message through Russian officials about the illicit occupation or takeover of part of Ukrainian territory by Poland. In this way, the aggressor is trying to distort its brutal actions against Ukraine. In particular, the Russian representative on the international arena has already announced that Poland intends to occupy part of Ukraine. It was Foreign Minister Lavrov, one of those who has the option to translate the official position of Russia. Andrei Kartapolov, head of the State Duma's Defense Committee, also spoke on the Russian state-run Russia 24 TV channel. Accordingly, through such reports, Russian propaganda is trying to convince part of the internal audience and part of the external audience that Ukraine is being occupied by several parties, not just Russia. Of course, it's a fake. We receive military and economic assistance from our international partners, for which we are grateful, because with the help of these resources, we repel the aggressor. Other Russian officials continue to spread fakes about alleged biological and chemical laboratories that we have repeatedly exposed. Now the Vice Speaker of the State Duma, the odious Irina Yarova, has spoken out, saying that the United States and NATO have been assimilating Ukraine for 20 years, and this information seems to have been confirmed by the Pentagon. This is a lie. There were no such reports. And NATO countries have not conducted any laboratories for the production of military biological projects and weapons. The only argument why Russian officials use this fake over and over again is to justify their aggressive actions against Ukraine. Their Russian scientists have long refuted the statements of their own officials. Meanwhile, Russia is beginning to feel the lack of international experts or leaders who would defend it. Remember last week we mentioned the odious Silvio Berlusconi. Now the equally odious, bloody Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad has made a statement in support of Russia. There he gave an interview to Russia Today Arabic, a Russian propaganda resource for the Arab world, where he stated that it is allegedly a war unleashed against Russia, which is not related to the topic of the expansion of the NATO bloc. This is Assad's first interview since his re-election in May 2021. Assad himself is internationally isolated and on international platforms is actually another mouthpiece of Russian state propaganda and supports all the decisions produced by the Kremlin. Another voice in support of Russian propaganda came from a Swiss journalist and politician who only repeated the thesis of the Russian state. We are talking about Guy Metan, who gave an interview to the program Время, telling that allegedly 90% of the population of Italy supports Russia. Who is Guy Metan? In fact, he is a man who obtained Russian citizenship back in 1990s, but that fact does not stop him from being a member of the Grand Council of Geneva. In his public statements, he has repeatedly acted as a mouthpiece for the Kremlin. In particular, he opposed the idea of creating an international tribunal on the shooting down of Malaysian Boeing. He was awarded the Russian Order of Friendship, Reporters Without Borders, after a conference he organized about the White Helmets' activities in Syria, named Metan a repeater of Russian propaganda. This proves once again that Russia has a crisis of its own and international speakers. That is why they invite odious individuals with no reputation in the world to the podiums. And these statements are designed either for those who do not understand international politics at all or for internal audience. And finally, Russia continues to use the image of the boy Alyosha to give its own aggression a slightly more human face. This time graffiti with the boy Alyosha appeared in Irkutsk. This is not the first time that they have tried to change Russia's image in the world because of this childish image. Think of chocolate, other graffiti and video spots on Russian television. Russian propagandists have a crisis of genre, but it also proves that they do not stop in their aggressive actions and try to continue to deceive the whole world by committing their aggression against Ukraine and justifying it in various ways. I will end the briefing with my traditional appeal not to trust Russian propaganda, but to trust the Ukrainian TV marathon, Ukrainian journalists, the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian political leadership. See you soon.